Kia ora koutou katoa. My name is Mick. I am one of the co-directors of Genomics Aotearoa, which is a New Zealand government initiative to build national genomics and bioinformatics infrastructure in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We are on a tight schedule, so I'm going to jump straight into it. We're talking about the Aotearoa Genomic Data Repository. This is an in-nation repository for data storage, management and sharing that preserves Indigenous authority over the data. So the repository is designed to allow researchers to share non-human genomic data without impacting the authority or the standing of their Indigenous research partners. A little bit of background on Genomics Aotearoa. So our funding started in 2018 and we've recently had our contract renewed until mid-2030. We're a multi-institutional collaboration working across three broad areas. So that's health, environment and primary production. We also fund Māori community-led projects through our Indigenous Genomics Platform Fund, and our goal is to create genomics and bioinformatics infrastructure by funding exemplar research projects. So we're developing infrastructure by doing the research. One of those projects, the one we'll talk about today, is the AGDR. This has been developed over the last 6 years through a collaboration between Genomics Aotearoa and NESI, our New Zealand eScience infrastructure, which some of you will know has recently been merged with our Research and Education Network New Zealand, REANZ. Despite involving far too many acronyms, I want to thank the team for the fantastic work they've done over 6 years from building this, this multi-institutional and distributed project. So something that will need no introduction to this audience. Just wanted to highlight some of the major data sharing initiatives that have been underpinning our work in this space. I want to focus a little bit on the fair and care principles because they really have underpinned what we've done here. We have had a little bit of criticism from the open science community, I shouldn't lump the open science community in there, from some of the open science community about creating a closed repository. However, as you will all know, the two A's there, accessible and authority control under fair and care, those work together really nicely if you have a framework available that enables data access requests to be handled to ensure the accessibility. So that's what we've tried to do with what we've set up here. Also wanted to highlight the listen principles just at the bottom there. These talk specifically about benefit sharing in the context of genetic data, which is really relevant to us because some of the data within AGDR could be used for commercial purposes. Just from a Aotearoa New Zealand perspective, I wanted to mention some of the background relating to the Treaty of Waitangi, our nation's founding document. And the responsibilities we have under the treaty around the protection of data from taonga or treasured species. What I really want to say here is that the treaty guarantees Māori sovereignty over these data. So that's what we're working towards with AGDR. If you're interested in some of that work, some of the work GA has funded in this space, I'll refer you to the Te Nohonga Kaitiaki guidelines, which can be downloaded from our website. And a lot of the work that was done in order to set up the cultural components of the submission and access request process was done by Ben Tiaika, who is GA's former Vision Mātauranga coordinator. Ben put together a set of culturally appropriate steps to ensure that kaitiaki, or guardians of the data, are involved in the data management process. And Ben's quote at the bottom there really sums up one of the main drivers for putting the data repository together, which was, once our data leave Aotearoa, they lose any and all protections provided by the Treaty of Waitangi. So AGDR is a combination of cultural component, which specifies the appropriate mechanisms for kaitiaki involvement, underpinned by fair and care, and also the Te Mata Ira guidelines for genomic research with Māori communities. And it has a technical component, obviously, and that enables the data management and sharing. The key components there are the Gen 3 platform for hosting the repository, and then Globus for enabling data ingest and data sharing. Another key component of our repository is the AGDR Māori Advisory Board. This group provides operational oversight and guidance. In particular, ensures there's a constant cultural lens being applied to the operation and future direction being taken by the repository. And up here I've just got the submission process. Basically, once we get a submission inquiry, it's checked for suitability, and then the team work with the researchers to capture relevant metadata and upload the data into the repository. And then DOI minting is part of that process. In terms of requests, We get a request in, there's an initial check for completeness, and then once that request is complete, we pass that on to the Kaitiaki team for assessment. Sometimes more information might be needed. We can facilitate that if we have to. And then if a decision is made to approve access, the researcher has to agree to the data access conditions, and then we share that data via Globus. The key point here is the big red box, which is that data can't be shared without the approval of Kaitiaki. And here we've got a shot of the current version of the web page. You can see there's a brief description of the repository on the left, and then there's a bit of information about the right. And a bit of information on the right. I'm going to hand over to Libby to tell us what's in there.
I'm just going to continue on with where Mick left off. So, AGDR is a repository for digital sequence data that includes raw files and also derived data products such as assembled genomes, metagenomic data sets, and population genomic data sets from various organisms and species. Some of those species are extinct now, things such as the moa, and some of those data sets represent data sets that have now been repatriated from overseas repositories. Cumulative growth of data in AGDR has been slow initially as we've gone through like a proof of concept type stage where focus has been on development, but now that we're publicising the resource and we're fit, I guess, fit for purpose, we're seeing a huge growth and uptake by the community. You can see here the first 5 years of AGDR very much was focused on development. I'll just bring your attention to a couple of notable recent developments, the first being our metadata schema, which is based on the minimum information about X sequence, which is provided by the Genomic Standards Consortium, routinely used by genomic data repositories, and also the Darwin Core standard that's used for biological samples. And this makes sure that our data is not only reusable, but is also interoperable with data sets that have been taken from other discipline-appropriate repositories. The other notable development, I guess, is the incorporation and now interoperability with the local context labels and notices. So this is an international initiative, so it's a web portal that allows Indigenous communities to define and provide more cultural context in relation to projects and data, and to also assert how they'd like it to be used in future. So we are one of the first integration partners with the Local Context Hub, and what that means is we use a few different tools that they provide, the first being the Open to Collaborate notice. It's a disclosure notice we put on our web page. It means that we as a repository are committed to working with Indigenous communities and supporting their interests. The second mechanism we make use of is the biocultural notices. These are for researchers to apply to projects and data sets where they get to note and disclose that there are cultural contexts or Indigenous contexts relevant to these data that will need to be considered. They can disclose them, they can't assert what they are, but it's really a notice that should be generically machine-readable, human-readable, and understood by the international community as flagging there are cultural and Indigenous things to consider here. On top of that, biocultural labels can be applied by our Kaitiaki or Indigenous communities, and these further assert information around the cultural context of that data. So it may be information about provenance, important protocols that need to be associated with the data and its use, and can also assert how the communities would like the data to be used in future. So to give you a quick overview of the operation of AGDR, I just got this case study here from our Indigenous Genomics platform. It was led by an iwi called Rangatane in collaboration with one of our Crown Research Institutes. They created a genome, and they wanted the data to sit in AGDR, our national repository. They wanted to use the international mechanism of local context, labels and notices, and they also uniquely wanted to name the genome with a Māori name. This is what the interface of AGDR looks like. You can search things using author name, keyword, or various forms of a species name. If you click there on Swamp Māori, which is the species that the genome was generated for, you get taken to a project page with an AGDR. There's lots of descriptors about the project. I can't go into too much detail because I'm over time. But there's also a biocultural notice sitting there. And if you click on that, you actually get taken into the Local Context Hub. So this is where the community has complete control and can assert what they want and describe what they want about the project in their own words, in their own narrative. Okay, just really quickly to sum up, I just want to point out that AGDR is fit for purpose. We are serving our user base in terms of kaitiaki can control the access to the data. Researchers can meet their obligations to our national treaty, that's Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and researchers can access the data and reuse it. We've seen this happen. Now that we have ongoing funding, our focus is really on ensuring sustainability into the future and also thinking about governance in a model where we can compensate kaitiaki in their really important role in the repository, but also thinking about federated structures that may actually better serve the Māori data sovereignty aspirations of our communities. So I'll probably leave it there. One thing we're doing as part of our, I guess, this growing global community is thinking about standards, data standards that will help us maintain interoperability with other genomic data repositories. We're hosting the Genomic Standards Consortium in New Zealand. If you're interested, talk to Mick and I. And a big shout out to all our collaborators and very much in particular to those Māori communities who've shared their vision for Māori data sovereignty that we've really tried to enact here and is motivates us to do what we do. So thank you for listening.